Good day. More stuff to talk about as things continue to heat up on Facebook and with my blog and people voicing opinions. And one of the things that always irritates me is people who will say to you, well, you don't have a right to speak on that because you don't know what you're talking about. You've never done that, or you don't know what they go through. And this is regarding the problems with police shootings that we deem unnecessary, or that they're overstepping their authority, or they're needlessly shooting people. And then of course when someone like I or you or whoever steps up and says, hey, look at this video. I mean, this guy's laying on the ground with his hands up in the air. What the hell did they shoot him for? And then we're immediately called cop haters and all kinds of names and told that we don't know what we're talking about. We don't know what they go through. They just want to get home to their families at night. And to those people, I would say, bullshit. I do know what I'm talking about. I have been there. If you saw my last video, I've made it clear. I've been there. But just to offer some proof, I want to recount for you an incident that I encountered myself back in the mid 90s. Some of you may know this already, some of you don't. My family and I used to own three supermarkets in Richmond. They were all in what we would call low income neighborhoods. They didn't start out that way. They were in what we would refer to as middle to lower middle class white neighborhoods when we first moved in there. But demographics changed as white flight took place, people moving out to the counties. We had some Section 8 housing built nearby. And as those demographics changed, our clientele changed. And most of our clientele was black. That's just the way it was, okay? So I dealt with race issues all the time. I've never been bashful about talking to people about race issues, but that's another video for another time. And we used to have to deal with a lot of problems in our stores: shoplifting, drugs, alcoholics, people coming in there drunk and wanting to fight with somebody, people trying to cash stolen or counterfeit checks, people trying to rob us. We've had people shoot at my brothers and some of our employees. Nobody ever took a shot at me, by the way. You'll understand why in a few minutes. But we dealt with a lot of the same issues that the police out here on the street deal with. The difference was when I was doing it, I was usually on my own. I didn't have 5 or 6 police units in the area I could call on the radio and have there in a few seconds. It was usually just me. Sometimes my brothers were there, sometimes not. But usually when I was dealing with somebody, I was dealing with them on my own. I had special police powers in the city. Now, what that means is the clerk of the circuit court swore me in. I had to swear an oath, just like the police do. I had to follow police SOP, standard operating procedure for the uninitiated. I had to do police paperwork. So I was held to the same standards as the police officers, but my precinct, if you will, was our property. Any crime that was committed on our store property, I was in fact considered a police officer and could respond. I had a badge that looked just like the Richmond City Police, but it said special police on it, not just police officer. I carried a firearm, I carried handcuffs, and I had to arrest people from time to time. Okay? I've even had to fight with people because some people don't want to be arrested. So I do know what the police go through. I rode with Richmond police in the 2nd precinct, that's the south side of Richmond, for years. Now, I was a regular with them. They considered me part of the group. That's how much I rode with them. I was in the police academy in 1981. I was actually in there for a little over a month, becoming a police officer when they changed the residency requirement. The city just up and said, if you're going to work in the city, you have to live in the city. Now, this is after my wife and I had just gotten married, and we had just bought a house in Chesterfield. And I go to the Lieutenant Bennett was his name, in charge of the academy. And I said, hey, are they going to grandfather me in, or guys like me? Because I've already got a house in the county. Nope, you're going to have to move. I said, well, the hell? I just bought a house. Do they literally expect me to just give up my house and move back into the city? I'm afraid that's what that means. Well, I told him, I said, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to resign. I can't do that. He said, well, just, I know, I wish it was some other way, but you're going to have to give your notice, give 2 weeks, and do the 2 exit interviews, one with Richmond Police, one with Human Resources. Okay, did all that. Went back to work in the family store. 8 months later, they rescinded the order. I reapplied. Burt Walker, who was the detective who did my background investigation, is a friend of mine on Facebook. He can verify this if you think I'm full of crap. I reapplied and I was denied. Seems that there was a certain major in the city who had a hard-on for people who resigned in the academy. Didn't matter what the circumstances were. My point being, I was trying to become a police officer. So when some of you out there have your knee-jerk reaction and immediately start calling me a cop hater, you might want to rethink your stance a little bit there, pal, because I'm not a cop hater. I am a bad cop hater, okay? And I am a hater of those who make excuses for bad cops. You see the difference? Okay, that being said. So I'm working the store. It's an October day. It's a nice day. It's not overly cool. It's kind of warm actually for Richmond. And this youngster comes into the store wearing a heavy down coat. Now, the weather did not call for this coat. And if anybody out there has ever done retail security, whether in uniform or in plain clothes, you have certain things you look for. And one of the things you look for is unusual dress. If they're wearing a heavy coat on a warm day, your radar goes up, okay? I mean, it's just the way it is. So this kid's walking around with 3 or 4 candy bars in one hand, a couple of bags of potato chips in another, and he's doing that thing with the eyes. He's looking all around like he's not even looking at what he's buying. And I didn't feel like messing with it, so I made it clear to him I was watching him. I just stood there and looked at him. Okay, I'm watching you. And he saw it. He knew what was going on. So he puts a couple of candy bars back, puts back one of the bags of chips, comes through the cash register, buys a couple of candy bars and the bag of chips. Cashier puts them in the bag. Kid walks outside, hands the bag to another kid who's sitting on the railing out in front of the store. And as soon as he does that, he bolts. I mean, full sprint towards the far end of the store, up towards Jeff Davis Highway, if any of you are familiar with that area. Now, this struck me as kind of odd. So I'm thinking to myself, well, I wonder if he concealed something before I started watching him. That's a possibility. So I decided I'd walk out there and see what he was doing. So I'm walking up the sidewalk, same direction he had just run. A few seconds, here he comes back around the corner, and he's adjusting his belt, pulling his coat together and pulling his pants up. Now I'm thinking to myself, well, that little bugger did steal something. So I'm just going to walk up and have a talk with him. Well, we get about 20 feet apart, and he stops, and his coat comes open, and I see the pistol grip of a .45 caliber model 1911 handgun. Any of you who know handguns, you know what I'm talking about. It's the old model 1911. Now, he stands there for a second looking at me, and I'm standing there looking at him, and I'm thinking, oh shit, he's got a gun. Now what are we going to do? Well, the dummy that he was, and this kid, by the way, was 14. Okay? 14-year-old kid. 14-year-old black kid. I know that's important to some of you. All right? He reaches for the gun. I don't know why he reached for it. I never said a word to him. He just reached for the gun and pulls it out of his pants. Well, I immediately drew my gun, and I thumbed off the safety, and I'm pointing it right at him at center of mass, and I'm yelling at him, police officer, drop the gun. Police officer, drop the gun. Now, I'm yelling pretty loud, as you might imagine. He's standing there with the saucer-like eyes, just staring at me, and he's got his finger in the trigger, but he's got it pointed down at the ground, across his body, all right, like this. He hasn't brought the gun up yet, but I'm right on center of mass with him, and I've already made my mind up. If he raises that gun, I'm going to have to shoot him. There's just no other way around it. He's got a gun. So I'm yelling at him to drop the gun. Well, he says, but it's just a pellet gun. To which I responded, then drop the fucking pellet gun, which he finally did. All right. I told him to lay on the ground, put his arms out. I came over, kicked the gun away, handcuffed him, went over and picked the gun up. It was a .45 caliber replica pellet gun. This is before they started putting that little orange tip on the end of the barrel. Anybody who looked at that gun would have sworn it was a model 1911. I get him in the office. I call the police to come pick him up. I'm doing my paperwork. I can't even write. I'm shaking so bad. I'm so mad at this kid. And I'm just, it's all I could do to keep from spanking him. I just looked at him and said, what the hell were you thinking? Why did you even have this thing? And he's just shuffling his feet and looking down at the floor. He said, well, some kids in the neighborhood have been picking on me, and I didn't want them to mess with me, so I figured if I had something that looked like a gun on me, they wouldn't mess with me. And I said, well, what are you doing? Why'd you run up to the end of the store? Well, I didn't want to bring it in the store, so I put it in a bush out here on the side of the store, and I was just going back to get it. I just looked at him and said, do you know how close you came to dying today? Do you know how close I was to shooting you? The two police officers who responded heard the story, looked at him, asked him, is that what happened? Yeah, that's it. He said, do you know how lucky you are to be alive? He said, if Mr. Bayne had shot you, we wouldn't have charged him with anything. He would have been fully justified because both of them looked at that gun, and until you look at the bore at the end of the barrel, it looked like a model 1911. Now, my point in telling you all this is I was this close, people, this close to shooting that kid, but I didn't. I could have. As soon as he grabbed the gun, I could have shot him and been fully justified according to the law. But I don't carry a gun because I want to shoot somebody. I carry a gun to keep from getting shot. Do you understand the difference? And I was able to respond to the situation, to show some discernment, to keep my cool, and I didn't have to shoot the kid. Now, if he had brought that gun up, if he had moved from this position and started to move with that gun, I would have had to shoot him. I wouldn't have been happy about it. I would have had to live with that for the rest of my life. But I did not shoot the kid. So I have been in situations where my life, at least as far as I was concerned, was in danger. And this is just one occasion. I've had others. I've had people pull knives on me. I've had people try to hit me with bottles. I've had people try to beat the shit out of me. So I know, don't you dare, you sanctimonious, don't you dare sit there and tell me I don't know what they go through. I do know what they go through. But I also know that as a police officer, you have to be able to bring various and different tactics to bear. And your first tactic should not be to immediately shoot somebody. Now, if there are occasions when you do have to shoot someone, absolutely there are. I understand that. That's why I carry a gun, because I recognize that there may come a time when I will have to shoot somebody. But I don't go out first thing out of the gate with the idea that, I'm just going to shoot the guy. So I understand. I know what police go through. I also know that they have to be smarter than the average bear. They have to be better than the rest of us when it comes to use of deadly force. They have to be able to justify their use of deadly force just as you and I would have to justify it if we use it. And if they screw up, if they make a mistake, just like you and I make a mistake from time to time, then they need to be held accountable for it, just like you and I would be held accountable for it. That's all I've ever said. That's all I've ever demanded. That's all I expect. So when you immediately jump to cop hater and you don't know what they're going through and all this other bullshit that you throw out there because you don't want to have to think about it, and you don't want to have to consider that maybe your heroes in blue sometimes fuck up like the rest of us, just remember that not everybody is as ignorant of the situations as you think they are. I just want to get that out there. I want to make you guys aware of it. that not everybody is as ignorant about this as you want to believe they are. I know what they go through, and I expect them to show discernment, to show good sense, and to not immediately jump to shooting people just because they feel a little scared. Hell, I've been scared plenty of times. And I'm happy to say at my advanced age, I've never had to kill anybody. Could I have? On a couple of occasions, yes, I could have. And I would have been justified in doing so. But I was able to disarm the people. I was able to calm the situation down without having to use deadly force. All I'm saying is, I'd like to see a little bit more of that than first thing you do is shoot somebody.